tremendous talk. We got the industry, tea, and the jokes. Actors, directors, musicians, and more. You're listening to Tremendous Talk.
Hey everyone, I'm Law.
And I'm Ash, and this is a Tremendous Talk podcast.
Each week, join us as we guide you through the realms of Hollywood and beyond while we speak to industry professionals in the spotlight.
So, grab a boba tea and leave your shoes at the door. Welcome to Tremendous Talk!
Yeah! Thank you for joining us on yet another episode of Tremendous Talk. My name is Law. I'm an Indian and Filipino actor, host, and filmmaker who is very excited for today's guest because he's a good friend of mine.
Oh, yay! And I'm Ash. I'm a mixed Filipino-American actor, musician, and publicist who... This is just my favorite sweater, and I'm wearing it today, so I'm feeling nice and cozy.
Good. I'm glad you're feeling cozy. I don't want to get into it too much right now, but you're a soldier, and I'll say that. This is actually our second podcast that we're recording today, on top of a whole-ass junket that you are organizing and being a super publicist for, on top of some other stuff. But what are you
Just
into
say
right
it,
now?
Law. Just say it. Just
Ash
say
is
it.
sick, you guys. Ash is sick. And
There's
it's not
some
okay.
vid in this house. There's some vid in this house.
Oh no, don't give it a theme song. But you are a trooper. She's been running around all day. And so here's my question. Obsessions right now, what's giving you comfort right now in between it all?
Okay, so I being in publicity and all that stuff, and you have to watch a lot of TV shows and movies and programming, so you don't necessarily get the chance to watch what you want. So when I'm sick, I'm like, I'm gonna watch what I want to watch. So I blacked out and I binged the whole season of Never Have I Ever season 4. Oh my gosh, Law, I was crying. I felt every emotion. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Not season 4, no.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. Like, in terms of, I want to watch it 2 more times at least, in terms of storytelling, in terms of rounding characters out, in terms of, like, I don't know, it's one of those things where you, like, when you shut a book that you really like, and you feel that feeling of, like, I got all these characters' final endings, but I'm also so sad that I'm not going to see them anymore. That kind of thing. It was a lot of emotions all at once.
Wow,
and
that sounds really great.
It's amazing. And there's, like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the representation in it is pretty awesome. Like, I loved seeing some of the stuff in there. It was very exciting. I can't wait for you to watch it. And just to have played the tiniest role in PR on season 3 was fantastic. And, like, diving into the characters and being in on all that. And now seeing them fleshed out even more on season 4, so wonderful. And there's a character in Never Have I Ever season 4 that is also the lead in a TV show called Ghosts, which I have been binging. I'm loving Ghosts. It's giving me, like, Parks and Rec meets Halloween or something like that, and I'm here for it. What about you?
Yeah.
What are you obsessed with?
Oh boy, I have been watching a lot of Apple TV Plus content. Shrinking, I don't know if I talked about this. I finished Shrinking, which is so good, you guys. It's Harrison Ford, Jason Segel, Jessica Williams is in it. She's great. I have stuff on the docket I'm really excited for, like The Bear season 2 is really, like, on my list. I know Warrior season 3 is coming soon. But as of right now, I'm just like, I mean, I'm trying new shows, which is interesting. Like, I'm just, like, starting things. Not everything's a winner, but then you find little gems. Like, I really like, I think it's called the Big Door Prize so far. I'm watching it little by little. I've watched all of Black Mirror. No, not big. I watched Black Mirror season 6, I think it is, and it was really interesting. There were a couple bangers though of an episode. I can't wait for people to have seen it now. But yeah, that's kind of like what I'm watching right now. I'm actually consuming a lot of content, and I got a big week of content ahead of me in terms of, like, covering junkets and stuff. It's crazy. Everyone's trying to fit in their publicity and their press before the big strike happens, or compounds rather. And so
by the time this podcast is out, we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out what happens. But I'm excited for, like, the new Ninja Turtle movie, Barbie. Like, those are gonna be cool.
Okay, so we did a podcast at literally 8 a.m. this morning. Between now and 8 a.m., what have you filled your day with? What have you been doing?
Interesting question. Editing. I was editing for other outlets. I made a couple reels for this outlet. So mostly just working, and then I had some tea and water, and I have my little bottle of caffeine drink. It does not look great on camera, actually.
Wait, what is in that? But okay, for listeners who are just listening, Law is drinking out of it looks like a plastic smart water bottle.
It's just a
that's
smart water bottle
literally
that I
green.
added Mio to.
It
but it's
looks
like-
like swamp water.
I'm glad it's
Is the
just
creature
swamp
from the
water.
Black Lagoon inside of there?
No, he did hand this to me though. It kind of looks like ooze from Ninja Turtles too.
Do you remember Slime from Nickelodeon?
Absolutely, I've been slimed before.
You've been slimed?
Oh hell yeah, I've been slimed. It was an experience. I was my buddy. His name is Kyle Pitson. He was a producer at Nickelodeon, and he was like, "Hey man, do you want to come on as a PA for this shoot? Because we're doing like the Kids Choice Awards. We're doing like a slime warehouse thing." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great. I need some work." And he was like, "So here's the thing. You're not really gonna PA. You're gonna be like a stunt, like the stunt slime guy." And I said, "Okay." I show up to this random like effects warehouse in the mountains near LA, and there's just vats of this slime everywhere. And then
oh my
they
God,
bring
my
in
dream.
two of the Thunderman kids, and they hit me with a slime mortar, like a like big bomb type one. I'm wearing a Dickies jumpsuit and goggles, and then they fire hose me with slime, and then he pegs my face, the Thunderman. Anyway, that was the first time I ever got my own trailer, but walking in there like a scene out of Dexter, because it was like lined with plastic, because they were like, "Don't mess anything up." I was like, "Then don't slime me." I was coming out of everywhere, and I was wearing clothes. Amazing. It's the feat of science.
Wow.
So that's a little insight of like what my first year out in LA, like the kind of work I was just trying to pick up. Anything
You know what's
goes.
so I mean, like, any normal person would be like, wow, what an opportunity. And I'm like, what does the paperwork look like on that? I mean, are you a stunt
Probably
person?
not
Is
good.
there a bump
Probably
on that?
not
Is that
good. I'll tell you that. If I got hurt, it probably would not have been good. Shout out to Kyle, though. That was a lifelong dream. I've always wanted to be slime.
Oh,
have an
man,
edible
that's
version.
awesome.
And then they have, like, it's all edible, but you don't want to be eating it. But they have an edible version. And it didn't taste like anything. It kind of just tasted like what you expect it to taste like. Does that make sense? Like
I mean,
cornstarch.
what do you expect?
Like cornstarch
slime
and
to
water.
taste?
Yeah, just like flour-esque. That's kind of what I remember, at least.
I mean, it's kind of a bummer to hear that it doesn't taste like green apple or something, because that's what I would expect. I
But
mean,
remember when we were kids, they were always like slime, like there were like recipes for like slime pudding and stuff that Nickelodeon would put out. I used to do that and like color my food.
mhm.
So we'll just remember it that way. Vanilla-esque.
Oh, okay. That's good then.
That's better,
that's
right?
good.
Yeah,
That's
lay
good.
it on me. Slime me now. It's just funny.
Wow, that's so fun. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what a
Little
memory.
Random memory. And you just unlocked it. I was
Wow.
like, oh, slime. Yeah, I've been slimed. I know slime.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
well,
the
I guess I'll
podcast,
see you
guys.
guys later. You know what?
Bye.
I bet our guest, when he joins us, I bet he would know how to make slime, to be honest.
Like
should
real
ask him
slime
later.
though?
I don't know. Maybe like a slime. That's a good question. I don't know if it'll
Honestly-
be licensed Nickelodeon slime.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
We've talked about slime enough. Anything else that you want to talk about before we jump into introducing our guests?
I kind of want to know what you've been up to. I know you just saw twice. What else is new?
Twice. What else is new? Just a lot of waiting around. There's a lot of junkets stacking right now, so I'm busy for the next couple days or a week. And then something really exciting. I am I am moderating a panel at Comic-Con. I am
What?
on a panel at Comic-Con.
What?
And I'm maybe moderating another panel at Comic-Con.
Wait, plug them.
Yeah.
Plug them.
Well, there's 3 of them. One is with the Welcome Party Pot. One is with Pat Loika. He's a cosplay photographer. It's about storytelling and cosplay. And then they're all on Thursday. And the last one is called like How Legendary Stories Are Told and Retold. And that's presented by the Nothing New podcast. Actually, also another Filipino American in that.
Cool.
And then the other one is Filipinos in the entertainment business, or the Filipino diaspora in the entertainment business. And I'm on that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's sorry, that was a lot of information, but they're all on Thursday. One's at like 1:00, one's at like 7, one's at 8. So it's like
what a Thursday.
Yeah, but it's so exciting because Comic-Con is like one of my favorite places in the world. So that is another big like I'm looking forward to it thing. Also,
is this your first time like working Comic-Con or being involved in any of the panels and stuff?
So last year was my first time being on a panel at Comic-Con, which was like a big deal. I've never gotten to moderate at a Comic-Con or anything like that. It's just like your dream to have that name placard. In fact, I have it right here because it means so much to me. So this is from last year.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Not gonna lie, like even me, who I don't watch everything that's coming out of Comic-Con, I've seen that placard before. That's cool.
It's cool, right? Yeah. And so to like even have photos of my panel online is really cool. We actually went viral last year. Not to go on another tangent. We went viral for our panel because it was called Filipinx in entertainment or something like that. Filipinx.
Oh yeah, I remember about that. Yeah.
And everyone from like mainland Philippines had a problem with the term. Filipino Americans are like, get over it. And it became this whole thing. So my friends were friends from like high school being like, hey man, is that you? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they're like, oh, is that Donkey Doug? And I was like, yeah, that's Donkey Doug. That's Missionerito. Yes. And it's just funny because like, I don't know, the highlight wasn't on the wonderful conversation that JPG put together.
A letter.
It's about that term. And I thought that was really disheartening.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming out right now, actually. Maybe I'm pretty sure that conversation kicked off a lot of it, but there's a lot of like discourse happening between Filipino Americans and mainland Filipinos. So it's very interesting.
The grad stole, I know, is like a big instigator of that. And it's interesting because even this podcast, I had a family friend listened in and gave some feedback. And it was very bluntly, like, to me, it felt blunt of like, it's not for Filipinos, but I think maybe Filipino Americans could connect with it. And I was like, dang, I thought our podcast was pretty universal. And so that was really disheartening because it just felt like it's cut from the same cloth as like the other complaints that like, but we need to stay rooted in our culture somehow. And this is how we choose to connect. Right. And so, and like, imagine if we didn't. Imagine if we just became Americans and we lose all that here. We can't, pass that down when we can pass it down.
Oh, so that makes me sad.
And I don't really get the conversation necessarily, but I am biased because I am Filipino American.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, I mean the grass will always be greener, and there's never a way that we'll truly be able to see through each other's eyes because our experiences are all inherently so different.
Yeah.
Although they overlap a ton.
Cary Gunnar Lee is living every nerd's dream. From his humble beginnings as a Halo cosplayer at Comic-Con, he has now worked on some of the biggest titles in recent years, including Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Amongst Thieves, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. From the workshop to sharing a gunfight with Obi Wan himself, Cary really does have one of the coolest jobs on Earth. And he also turned me into Stormbreaker one time. We'll get into that. Welcome to the podcast, Cary Gunnar Lee.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is our little podcast that we're very happy to highlight people like you that are working in the industry in really cool ways that maybe we don't get to talk about a whole lot. And I don't know, man. I have so many questions for you, Ash. I know the guy, so I would love to give you a question. If there's anything that you're dying to know about Cary right away.
You know me, I ask these like really deep-seated mind kind of questions, so it's not going to have an exact question to it, but I just kind of want to know these characters that you're creating, what is the journey like from pen to screen?
Mm.
Like what are your dreams like? Can you take us through the process of really the what you do is so right and left brain, right?
Mhm.
Like how do you navigate both of those sides of your brain, like the logistic side of like how these costumes are going to go and the fun
Right.
side of like what feathers, I want feathers.
It's pretty overwhelming a lot of the times. I mean, it's certainly not just me that's doing it, but like between, from initial inception of the idea to the finished product, there's just so much going on in between. And uh, like you're talking about, like there's a lot of process figuring out, like, well, how does this actually work? How do you make it work? How do you build the thing? There are instances when we play the character, so then we have to know, okay, well, what is the character like? What does he do? What are intentions? All this stuff that helps you guide your mannerisms and such. And then you also have to span that across multiple people sometimes. For instance, like the character I played in Obi Wan, it wasn't just me. I had to have my head controlled by two other people. So while I'm certainly thinking, okay, well, how would a bounty hunter, get in a gunfight with Obi Wan? My two colleagues are also like, okay, well, how was Cary's head get in a fight with Obi Wan? So it's this crazy orchestra that's going on. And then, like you were saying, like we kind of just get artwork right away, or not say right away, but like, we look at a couple pictures of what we need to make. We go, okay, how are we going to make it? Whether that starts in digital, meaning whether we are 3D modeling it, or if we're fabricating it, meaning we're kind of making it like on the floor just out of whatever we have. Kind of, I don't want to belittle the work, but like it's kind of like what cosplayers, like what I did growing up was just like, what do I have around the house? What can I put together? What can I
Mm.
cobble together? So it's really a fine balance of like, how would you make this part? How would you solve this issue? How is this thing going to go on somebody? How are they going to wear it? How are they going to survive weeks and weeks of shooting? So there's always just a fine balance. Nothing's ever perfect, but like our main goals are make it look good, make it believable, make it survivable. Like, and I don't want to make it sound like we're making death traps, but a lot of these suits are very heavy, including some of the ones I've worn have been this 60-pound rig that's essentially mounted to your
Wow.
neck almost. So you're just looking at the stunt guys like, please just don't
Please
kill me.
be gentle.
So, and like a lot of it is just figuring out as you go. You find your sins out as you're building something. Like for instance, like the Master Chief suit. Like you think, okay, how do you fit this suit on somebody? Are they 6'5"? Do you find someone that's 6'9" and then they fit perfectly, or do you build it out and someone's 6'5" and kind of cheat their dimensions a little bit? There's all sorts of stuff that you have to figure out, try. If it doesn't work, go back and try it again. And with crazy deadlines, sometimes you just have to pick a direction and go. We're kind of a rapid prototyping facility that has not a lot of time to make something that's never been made before, and just hope that it's believable, it works, and that it's exactly what the client, or, for instance, the director is looking for. So it's just a lot of I don't want to, again, it's kind of guesswork in a way. Like a lot of things don't exist, so you go, okay, well, let's make something and hope it works, and then revisit if it doesn't work. It's a lot.
It's so interesting because like when we met, it was like in college, and we were going to like WonderCon, and you were dressing up as like a Halo Spartan, or actually you've had like a bunch of great cosplays over the years, and are just incredible. So to see you doing all this stuff now is like even more mind blowing because it's like your skill has just exponentially grown in my eyes as like the outsider
Aw.
looking in. But
Mhm.
how much of that stuff did you do back then? Like, was the foundation for this now? Like, do you think if you didn't have that cosplay background and you just like kind of got into it and stumbled into it, you would be as successful or working on such great titles?
My upbringing certainly fueled or gave me so much like blueprints to work with. There's so much foundation to work with. I came from a mechanical engineering background at school, and then I did cosplay as like a hobby essentially, which is one of basically two ways that people get into this line of work. Either they were a hobbyist or they were a makeup school is typically a pretty
An
common
engineer.
way where people learn. And yeah, the engineer side helped me do more with the mechanical side of things, whether it's building robots or just building structures and stuff. Uh, but that foundation helped a lot when I first started at Legacy, because you're instantly overwhelmed by all these incredibly talented people. I sit 10 feet away from a guy who built a dinosaur in Jurassic Park 1. I'm like, how am I gonna ever I'm never gonna impress this guy. Like, how do I ever compare to this guy? This guy literally spit black stuff on Wayne Knight 30 years ago. What am I? Who am I? So a lot of it is just going in with no ego too. Like I went and I'm like, listen, I'm not fully incapable. I have a decent amount of ground level talents, but I'm clearly in over my head in a certain degree. You know, that I'm building on a scale I haven't built before. But having all the groundwork kind of done, like how do fasteners go together? How long does glue take? What when do you use hot glue? When do you use super glue? There were so many little things that I got out of the way in my garage meeting. Like I would build something and it would break, and it'd be like, well, I'm glad I didn't do that in a professional setting where they would think I'm just don't know what I'm doing. And to be fair, they probably didn't know what I was doing, but because it's just like, again, you're just surrounded by so much talent and so many people that are just making informed decisions from 30 years of experience that I'm like, I'm here, I have built this one suit, maybe two, and I would like a job, please. So thankfully it was more than nothing, because I have seen, we have, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like we have interns sometimes that maybe they're engineering students, and so they want to get an idea of what it's like to work in the industry, and again, nothing against them, but like if they have no experience with the stuff other than maybe being in classrooms and the classroom mechanics and stuff, they're kind of overwhelmed. Maybe they don't know what they're looking at, which is one of the harder things when you're in conversations about how do you build something. You're like, I don't even know what is fiberglass. So there are moments like that I'm like, oh, thank God I know what they were talking about, or I'd be even more lost, which still happens, obviously, quite often, because like I said, these guys, they work with such incredibly over my head stuff that I'm just like, okay, I still don't know what that is. It looks important, but one day I'll learn its name. But to answer your question, I'm so thankful that I had done a lot of it on my own to get a lot of my groundwork established and a lot of my mistakes out of the way. Just knowing what works, what doesn't work on a basic level. Because going in, then I at least was confident enough to be like, listen, I'm not incompetent, but you will have to teach me a little bit. So yeah, that was kind of my experience first starting with that amount of experience.
I'm also a fast learner.
That's what I said. I was
You
like,
can trust
I'm
me
halfway
with this.
capable and I can learn. Just bear with me. And like a lot of times there isn't time to learn sometimes. You know, if there are tight deadlines, you don't have time to learn. So I was fortunate enough to start when, not necessarily there was time, but there are people that were willing to teach me and take the time to teach me and go, he'll help us go faster in the long run as long as we teach him now.
Wow. Can we take it back to even like before you did cosplay and everything too? So there's a world where Cary is doing cosplay. There's a world where Cary is going to school for engineering. Like, what is the inception of those worlds, whether they collide yet or not? Like, how did you start getting into all of this? And what did your parents think?
My parents have been nothing but supportive. My mom, who is an artist, is always like, I knew you'd come back around to what I would consider an art, career.
But
so
she's
sweet.
been very nice. She up until she visited not too long ago to Legacy, she's like, I still didn't really know what you did until I saw everything, because it's kind of hard to explain sometimes. The amount of people that I've told, like, oh, the Grogu comes from Legacy Effects, they're like, you do the CG work? I'm like, no, he's real, he's tangible. And then they're like, I didn't know that. So there is a world where people don't know exactly what we do because we operate in a weird space. To go, are you a costume designer? Well, we do specialty costumes, but not necessarily a costume. Not what you would call a costume designer. Do you do makeups? Some part of our job is to create makeups. So Legacy does a smorgasbord of things. And to get back to your question, our Law and I's mutual friend JP would come down to San Diego where I was going to school, and he goes, "Do you want to go to Comic-Con and check it out?" And I was already pretty well into Nerdland, so I was like, "Yeah, I want to go check it out." And as ironic as it was around the time that Iron Man 1 was coming out. Legacy Effects did the practical Iron Man suit for Robert Downey Jr., and I saw that. And in a very, not thinking it through way, I was like, I'd like to do that someday. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do it, but, it'd be cool to work there someday. And so a couple times going to Comic-Con, seeing everyone's costumes, seeing all the professional stuff, and I was like, maybe I should try making my own thing. And our buddy that used to bring me to Comic-Con, JP, I was like, do you want to try building Halo costumes? This is really before the world of YouTube tutorials. So the information out there was very scarce. There was enough to kind of get started, and there was enough resources to really not feel like you're just like, I don't even know where to start. Because that's actually most people's problem. I've found is that everyone's like, I don't even know what to do. It's a little bit easier these days where 3D models and 3D printing is so accessible. Yeah. Back then, that 3D printers weren't as consumer budgeted, so it wasn't really that option for me. So I was like, how do I build things out of paper mache, essentially? So I'm going to Comic-Con, I see all these suits, I eventually make my own, I start seeing more and more stuff from Legacy FX, Ironhead Studios, Creative Character Engine, a lot of the LA based studios that would go down and put on big displays. And again, kind of a not well thought out plan, but I was like, I'm going to move to LA and work for one of these guys. And the first time I called Legacy, I was like, I would like one job, please. They're like, who are you? And it was not very well thought out in my head. I had done a lot of building on my own, but like they didn't know who I was. I didn't work with anybody that they had worked with, so by all intents and purposes, I didn't have any credentials that was tangible to them. So it was started as, oh, this looks really cool, to I'm going to build things for myself, too. I want to build things for the studios. And, thankfully it's worked out. But it was kind of like the shoot first, ask questions later kind of plan, because it could have gone really wrong. But thankfully it didn't. Hopefully that answers, kind of gives you an idea of the pathway.
Yes.
I personally love that you brought up Comic-Con, because I have a lot of memories of like seeing you guys at conventions. One of my favorite things about these two is that they would like sneak into Comic-Con parties in San Diego. And it was always funny because they would always come back with like this story of like, I don't want to get into too many details, but they were sly out there and they were living like this like renegade nerd life. I'm sure you're going to make a movie out of it one day.
There's certainly one story that I think should be turned into a short film with nothing else. That if we have the time, I could tell you the expedited version of it, but we can save it.
No, you can tell us if you're comfortable with it. We'll give you.
Yeah. So we were going to San Diego Comic-Con, and again, not really thinking it through, but like JP and I thought it would be cool to go to one of these Comic-Con parties, all these high celebrities. What would we do if we got in or talked to them? Who knows? But we just thought it would be a cool experience, and we knew that these things were very hoity-toity, very high security. We had a plan one day to dress up as San Diego Gas and Electric employees to work our way through the smorgasbord of hotel security checkpoints to go into. I guess I probably shouldn't name it. One of the high up parties. We were like, we'll get the blue overalls. We'll get a fake work order. I changed JP's phone number in my phone to be like my boss's name with like San Diego Gas and Electric as the company name, in case they called our bluff. And I was like, let me call your manager, which they did. And then it went to his voicemail, which he had changed to be like, this is so-and-so at San Diego Gas and Electric. We thought we had covered almost all of our bases. We had what I would consider pretty legit fake work orders for like, we just got to check on a breaker box. Little did they know that we were wearing suits underneath our blue coveralls. Our plan was roughly to get into the party, go to the bathroom, remove the coveralls, throw them away probably. We got them for $8 at Cary Gunnar Lee Auto Parts or something. Come out in suits, and hopefully no one would be checking for the guys who just walked in coveralls with these really cheeky glasses on. The only hang up is that we had got through 4 checkpoints. It was amazing. They usually say like, act like you belong and you'll get it anywhere. We'd be like, hey, we're here to check. And the security guys were like, just go, whatever. Until we got to the last, like the head honcho who went through let me call your boss. Let me see your driver's license. Like, where's your van parked? Went through all the questions that, like, to our credit, we were sweating on the inside, but we kind of kept our cool. And then the very last moment, he was like, okay, well, I got to have somebody come up here and basically verify this. And like, we kind of like, okay, we'll be in the lobby. And at that point, we're like, listen, this has been fun, but I think the gig is up, and we might as well take off and leave with a little bit of dignity and no jail time or anything. Not that trying to break into a party is, that harsh of a thing. But again, I don't really know why we thought it would be fun. I mean, we just thought it would be an experience because we just thought it'd be cool to be around these celebrities.
Here's the thing. That's a great story, and I know that is not the only
I have a picture I'll show you someday.
But the thing that I love is that you guys basically had your own heist movie, and the only reason the plan didn't work is because you didn't have like a couple more members. Like maybe you need the hacker guy, or
guy in the chair,
grifter, you know what I mean?
Or
the guy in the chair.
Some guy that comes up like he just got torn away from me. He's like, what do you want? I'm sent these guys. Like, why did you need me to come here? We needed someone to kind of give the same energy back. Because like, if you're stern enough, maybe you just bowl them over a little bit. But like, we weren't quite fully committed. We're like, you can talk to our boss. But if we had just been like, guy, we're just trying to do our job. So we we were young, maybe didn't play the attitude quite right, but I thought we got farther than I thought we would. I didn't actually.
That's incredible. What a story.
Okay, plan 2.0. We're going to sneak into the Oscars. Let's get this planned out now for next year.
Oscars.
It'd be hilarious if
The
like
Oscars.
it'd be hilarious like when you make this giant plan and for some reason you got invited that year. You're like, well, we got to sneak in anyways. And at the last second, if it didn't work, you'd be like, well, we got invited. We just thought it'd be funnier to break in.
Well, that kind of just takes the fun out of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On the red carpet in like sleuth suits behind
That's so
everyone. Oh,
funny.
Or
that's
like
amazing.
you're in the air vent. You're like, listen, we're supposed to be here. We just thought it'd be funny.
Dude, Cary, you're so talented and artistic. I
Aw.
remember you used to draw like I don't know if it was every day or every week. There was like a new doodle with like white and black ink on like a brown canvas of some sort. Ash, one time I dressed up as a hammer at a comic book convention and it went over very, very well. I was Thor's hammer. So the next year I said I need to be Thor's new weapon, Stormbreaker, part hammer, part axe. I hit up Cary with a very, very rough drawing of what I thought it would look like. And he used math and material and created the most durable Stormbreaker helmet that I could have ever wished for. That thing was indestructible. And it lasted for years and years until I eventually moved out. Like, it was just this massive thing. I'll have to put a photo up or something. But
Yes,
that's
please.
that's like your brain. Like you just made that conceptually. And that blows
my
my
favorite-
mind.
my favorite thing is often goofy stuff, and it was just a fun idea, and as people maybe know in this kind of line of work, like you just never have free time. But I was like, I got to make free time to do this because it's got to be fun. And
Yeah.
if you ever ask anybody at Legacy what their favorite project is, it's never Jurassic Park. It's not Iron Man. It's some goofy commercial where they got to make a squirrel with a crown or something, and they got to
Aw.
puppeteer or something.
That is true then. Like you're the projects that you like the most, that you prefer, are projects that you kind of are able to brainstorm on your own instead of projects that already have these kind of set parameters that you have to work within, yeah?
We typically enjoy the more creative liberties we're given, and depending on it really depends on the project and what that means. But there are certainly a lot of projects where they're like, here's exactly what we want, this is exactly what it needs to do, make exactly that, and it can be fulfilling because it's for my engineering side, it's fulfilling, meaning like I built something and it works, because sometimes that's not always a given. We built me and a couple of guys built the speeder bikes for Boba Fett, the season 1. Not the goofy Vespa ones, but the Tusken Raider ones, and those were like,
I like the clarification.
I mean, I didn't just stuck a bunch
You're
of mirrors
funny.
and give it a chrome paint job, but to me it was here's a picture, make it, and everyone's like, well, this isn't very, maybe it could be not as satisfying because it's you know exactly what you need to do. There's not a lot of figuring out, but to me it was just an achievement just to make it work, and so that is really fun for me. But like you were saying, the projects that we have much more creative liberties over, and especially when it comes to a performance, like if we're able to do puppeteering, for instance, then we really feel like we're a little bit more a part of it, as opposed to just building something and handing it off, being like, I hope that went well. So if we can be there to either, I enjoy it if I'm either there to see it work, whether it's a costume I built and I get to see someone wear it and see it perform, or if I get to do the performance myself, it's usually the more meaningful projects to me. It's just more fun to be able to see it come to life. Or if you're the puppeteer, for instance, then it's more fun to bring it to life yourself and then add your own little kind of shtick to it. Like the Obi Wan was my first suit performance credit, and that's still the most fun. Not just because it's the first one, but it was just more fun to build a character and bring it to life. And it was the first time I'd experienced that, especially on that scale. I don't know if I'll be able to top getting shot by Ewan McGregor, who was very
And
nice.
now you're a
about
bounty
shooting me.
hunter in the Star Wars universe. That's like crazy. You're a bounty hunter in the Star Wars universe.
It
That's
doesn't get lost
awesome.
in me. I every now and my friends are very kind. Every now and again, will be like, I tell people that my friend got shot by Obi Wan. So it's never it doesn't fade.
I'm
It's
that
not like
friend
that's done.
too.
On to the next level. I do that to my wife. I go, she
Dang.
worked on this. Did you know that? Because she's done some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
She's been in the industry
Oh, wait.
longer than I have.
Yeah, let's talk
Yes.
about Jamie.
She's great. Yes,
Because you guys
I
met at the
Yes.
shop, right?
I did. I walked by one
What?
day.
Tell us
She had.
Oh,
I had walked by. We worked on different sides of the shop at the time, but I would always walk by, and she had this one picture that really hurt me. There was a picture of her hockey team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, beating my hockey team, the San Jose Sharks, in the Stanley Cup final, and it's in San Jose, so it's even more crushing. And I remember that day very well, being like, we made it to it was the first time going to the cup. I was like, how could we lose? It was our first time. And so I just remember walking by one day and be like, it's a really nice poster you have there. And then a blossoming relationship ensued after that. But yes, we worked together for a little bit before we started going out. And now we are married.
Yeah.
That is
It's-
the best meet cute ever.
Isn't it a great meet cute?
If there wasn't a picture there, maybe I wouldn't have had the courage to talk to her, talk to a pretty girl at the shop.
There you go.
Oh,
Small
The
victories.
first time that I met your wife, you guys were both
Why was that
operating
close?
a bantha
kidding.
from.
Yo, that's right.
No, because I didn't really meet her because it was through a giant elephant alien, and it was so funny. Ash, this was at Star Wars Celebration, and he's inside, and he sends me a selfie of him and his wife operating this bantha. And then the next time that I actually met her in person, she was covered in goo because she was casting something important. Just like
It is a
just
messy
goo.
job. I remember telling her too. I'm like, my friend's out there, and he says, "Look to the left." So we would turn the bantha head a little bit, and I would text Lolly like, "Are we looking at you now?"
Yeah, I
And
took a
she,
selfie with
having
the
not met
bantha
her,
from the
yeah,
outside too.
She was like, "What's going on?" Like, my friend's out there. I'm trying to look at him with the bantha. So
this
you're right.
is so
That is an
cool.
air quotable
Oh my
moment.
gosh.
It was a fun. That was
Yeah.
the Mandalorian experience, if I'm not mistaken, down in Anaheim, and that was
Yes,
a
it
fun-
was.
a
It
first
was
Star
like
Wars
this
celebration.
whole back room full of stuff that you worked on. It's like
Yeah,
insane.
the majority of that stuff came from like there's quite a few characters and creatures there that were from other studios, but like so much of it was from us, and we never see it all in one place like that very often. So it's kind of cool to be like, oh, there's the thing we did in season 1, there's season 2, and beyond, and but for Boba Fett and stuff. So it's kind of nice. Like again, it's not that our egos need it, but it's kind of nice to have people be able to see it and appreciate it, because a lot of times they don't know what goes into it, and we had a lot of characters there that were what we would call like degloved. So like the Athorian character, the skin was removed, and then you got to see all the animatronics, all the aluminum, all the pistons, all the motors, all the servos. And most people probably don't know what they're looking at, but they're like, it's real. It's not just a static head that was, like maybe a digital reference to something. Like, it really moves. And so it was the first time I could tell a lot of people didn't know that these things were practical, or that they, what you see is what you get. And that was the same.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, the same story with Grogu is that a lot of people didn't know that was a real thing, and didn't know, and for a lot of people, until that panel that John Favreau had, our guys have Grogu come out on stage, and people were like, I thought that was a computer. I didn't know it was real.
Yeah.
So it's very cool.
And it's so interesting because you have this cute little guy, and then the way that it's puppeteered, it's just like these wires and stuff into like a like a joystick of some sort, right? Like it's like a bunch of little motors and stuff. It's like it's nothing like you've ever seen before, Ash. It's so interesting to see the behind the scenes photos of that.
A lot of that stuff it's crazy that the engineers come up with this, but like a lot of those cables you see coming out of the back, their function is to either pull something this way or pull something that way, and then someone translates all those movements into all the facial expressions you see out of Grogu, for instance. So it's crazy to see like just this pile of cables coming out. You're like, what does that do? And then you're like, the engineer has to be like, that's what makes the face do all those things. The times he looks at you like this, or the times his ears go down, or the time he has a little smirk, or his brow furrows. All little cables just pulling things. That's obviously an oversimplification, but like for all intents and purposes, it's wild that these guys can design these things and make them look so organic and so real.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
So-
insane.
That's where you lose me completely. Like, I'm all about these big idea concepts and the here's what we want to do and make people feel. But like, when you get math in the picture, bye. I'm like 6 rooms down. When you're building something, how do you, and you're presented with something that you can't necessarily like figure out, you're in a time crunch situation, you have a due date on Friday, how the hell do you get over like a writer's block? Like, how do you get through it and like solve the problem?
A lot of times we do something that's famously known as a garbage bag test. I believe this term came from way back in the day when a lot of people I work with were doing the Alien Queen for this James Cameron's Aliens. And they were trying to wrap their head around how do you make the Alien Queen practical, because it was a practical thing, and it's gigantic. And so they did what's called the garbage bag test, where they basically were like, this is what we think the mechanics need to look like, and we're going to wrap it in black trash bags to make it look kind of like an alien so we can film it. Because if you just show a director a bunch of mechanics moving, they don't really, maybe you think, oh, look, it works, the arm moves. but they're looking at a bunch of aluminum or metal and they're like, oh, what? And so you kind of have to get it as close as what you think the final thing needs to be to really sell it. And so we do that a lot when we're like, I don't know how to build this. A lot of times it just is as simple as we got to build something, see what works and see what doesn't work. So a lot of things go through different iterations. So there are times when we look at something and we're like, I don't know how to get this thing to work. There are Lola, I think the character's name is the little robot dish thing in Obi Wan. When I first looked, I wasn't responsible for any of that. I just want to put that out there. But when I looked at it, I was like, how are you going to make all of those? They have a list of movements they want from it. I'm like, this thing is this big. How do you possibly do that? Thankfully, those engineers are much better than I am, so they figured it out. But like you're saying, like in something like that, maybe you build something bigger, so you get like, okay, we got the movements down. Now it's like the Tony Stark thing. Obadiah saying like, I've simply asked you to make it smaller. So stuff like that. So a lot of it is just trial and error. Is kind of like the best answer I can give. Where like if we don't know how to do something, we're like, well, I always say this a lot of times when we talk about 6,000 different ways to do something. Eventually, someone has to be like, let's pick one of those lanes and see if it works, and then go from there. Because if we just talk about it all day, we're not going to build anything. So it is very hard to wrap your head around, especially because, and this is no fault of the people asking, but sometimes when the people ask for things, are like, we want a character that does this, and maybe there are conversations that happen where our guys are saying, well, it can do this, it can do that, and then it comes to us, they're like, we've told them it can do this and it can do that, and then now we have to make that work. So sometimes it's just like, it's just as simple as we've talked about, we wanted to do this, now make it happen. And for the most part, I would say we're able to deliver that. And so that's always fulfilling when you go, oh, thank God, we pulled that one off. Now for our next magic trick, we'll make Grogu do a backflip, which was one of the things it had to do. Yeah. Not me personally, but when those guys pulled it off, I was like, I don't know how you were going to do that, but movie magic.
Just the fact that you have to say not me personally because you've done so much and there's this world is so big, like that's cool in itself.
It's very hard to keep, like, a lot of times if we're proud of our stuff, we want to post about it, it's really hard to remember every single person to give credit to. Like, we tried to, we would love to. In a perfect world, everyone gets the credit they deserve and stuff. And so sometimes I'm like, oh God, I'm going to forget somebody, and someone will message me and be like, well, I did the fur on that. You didn't. I was like, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Like hundreds of people are involved in one thing because they're putting hair and like the fingers. I don't know, whatever.
No, you're right. And that's kind of to your point. Like, definitely nothing there is ever touched by just one person. No one can ever say, oh, this is my character. I built this. It's always an army of people, an army of very talented people that have to all be on the same page to build this thing. Because there's a very good chance that you could, if you're not on the same page, the mechanics could show up, be like, here's the skeleton for the thing. And then someone brings the skin and they don't fit. So it's quite a symphony to have all these people line up on the same page to make all their pieces, all their contributions line up to make a believable character, a believable suit, what have you, whatever it is we make. Like, I don't want to, it's, and a lot of times we look at it, we go, it's a miracle that all came together and it worked out perfectly. Like, because a lot of people maybe don't know like just how complex what they're looking at really is. So a lot of times like us or people at other studios will like, wow, it's wild that you can make that work. And a lot of people maybe just go, oh, that's cool, that's awesome that it works, but they don't. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for not knowing how an animatronic works, but like, it's really impressive how some of these things these engineers make that I'm like, I don't know how you do that.
Cary was kind enough to let me go on a tour of Legacy, a short little tour of the things I'm allowed to see. I'll say it that way. Because there's a lot more that I couldn't see, right? It's just like, that's just the nature of the work. But I remember walking around because there's some cool stuff. It's like walking through like a museum of cinema, like the Real Steel robots, Jurassic World's there, Obadiah Stane, Ironmonger's there, you know what I mean? Like, but full I remember size. When I pointed out Jarnathan from Dungeons and Dragons, you were like, oh yeah, that thing almost killed me. And so it made me think, like, to your recent memory, like, what has been the most difficult project to, like, on a personal level? You know what I mean? Like, what was, like, that you finished? Obviously, it all gets finished because the movies come out. But what is, like, your favorite, I guess, or your most recent memory of something difficult?
Jonathan actually is probably the greatest example of that. And it's kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is like sometimes people not that they don't know what they're asking, but maybe they know what they're asking is a tremendous ask. And something that was really tough about Jonathan is that he has this, I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like it's close to a 20-foot wingspan, which in the physics world is just really, really, really daunting. Couple that on top of the fact that the actor was wearing stilts, meaning your own feet are not on the ground, meaning you don't, it's uneasy walking. Maybe your feet are a foot above the ground. That. He's got fake hands on, essentially. He's got, these gloves that have finger extensions, so what he's grabbing is not really his hand grabbing it, which can be very it could really throw you in the real world. And is also wearing an animatronic head with low visibility. Couple that together with the rig of wings that I built for him, not just me, I should say, once again, I want to give proper credit, but being involved in that project,
team sport,
they're like, here, can you go ahead and just break physics for me, make this thing super light, make it work perfectly every time, and also put 200 something feathers on it. And so it's a very tall ask, just because to ask something that big, that vast, to work, and to also not just topple the suit performer over as soon as the wings open. Because we tried it at Legacy, where we put it on somebody and we would open the wings, and just the force of that was enough to really throw you around. And little things like that can really ruin a performance. Like if Jonathan's walking through those gates and his wings open and he also almost falls over, you're going to be like, well, this is clearly a guy just trying not to fall over. So I'm gonna certainly again give a lot of credit to the guy that was wearing that set of wings, and to the other guys making the other aspects of the suit. But that was one of the toughest times I've had with wrapping my head around the physics of it, being like, I don't know how you make that vast of a component to a character lightweight, functional, and work every time, something like that. And it's a tall order, and I felt even more for the guys that were on set dealing with it, because I was one of those things that I built and sent off, meaning I didn't get to see how it.
Yeah.
So I'm just over at Legacy, I hope that went well. And thankfully my boss came to me after it filmed, was like, I heard it went really well today, it worked. And I was like, really? So a little bit of disbelief, just because it's I mean, not to belittle it, but I was the least sure I was ever of sending something out. I was like, I think it's gonna work, but there are so many ways it can go wrong. A feather could get caught on something. There's so many individual feathers that something could break at any moment, that you build it as good as you can, and you do hope for the best sometimes. And that one was so complicated with so many moving parts and such a tall order and so much power moving through. The force it took to lift the wings and to flap them was enormous. And there's these very strong motors powering everything. And again, it's just very easy to just knock somebody over, because when we put it on, and we're not as fit as suit performers a lot of times, we're like, this is gonna knock someone over right away, especially if he's got stilts on. So it was certainly this perfect storm of there's so many ways this could go wrong, and it worked out really well. And I was like, thank God. And then, like you were saying, I was on display at Legacy, and I look at it, I'm like, it was tough, because then you're working long hours and you're tasked with a project that's really hard to figure out. And we went through, like we were talking about earlier, it's we go through a lot of iterations. We try to figure out what works best. We started with much heavier but more reliable pieces, and we decided they were too heavy, so we ended up going to lighter pieces. So not to pull the curtain back too much, but we go through so many different iterations, and you send it off, you're like, I hope that was the right call, because you don't really know until the day of filming. So
that's scary.
Yeah, that's terrifying, dude.
I don't want to make it sound like we're just a bunch of dummies just sending things off, being like, hope that works. There's obviously quite a deal of testing that goes into it, a lot of R&D and a lot of experience that helps shape all the components we build and stuff. But there's always just even the best built things will break sometimes. You just don't know. Filming is very, very rigorous. You do the same. Sometimes you do the same take. Yeah. On Obi Wan, I did my dying scene so many times that eventually, the head being so heavy, when I was shot and I fall on the ground, the stunt guys are like, let me pick you up. And I'm like, how about you just leave me here until they're ready to shoot again? Because this is the only time that the weight is not on my shoulders. They just left this dinosaur in the ground for 5 minutes while they reset everything. And again, I'm not in as good a shape as maybe some stunt guys are, but I was just like, man, this is so physically taxing. And I was up for the challenge, but it really can illustrate the point. Just a few second clip of me fighting Obi Wan that showed up in the show took a lot of effort. And so it's a lot more credit to the guys that have to film much more than I had to do for that show, especially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Insanity, dude. That's just such a cool insight to all that. And also thank you for your service. Like seriously, like
That's why we do it.
we're all happier for it. But like now I have to ask kind of like the mirror question to that is you get to work with like some really cool directors and actors that come into the shop. I remember the day that you told me that you helped make Thor's fat suit in Endgame, and like it broke my brain hearing that because I was just like, my friend helped make that, and then he made my hammer. Like I love
was my
those
wife that
pieces.
helped on that one. That thing,
Oh,
that
there
is
you
like one of those
go.
cool things. That is one of those. There are moments that it doesn't have to be the most popular thing. It doesn't have to be the thing that everyone talks about, but something that you're the most proud of. And like that's one of those things that it's just like fun to look at it. You're like, that's funny that you made one of the most ripped people on the planet. It's overweight.
It's like a fun, it's a funny thing to share, right? But like, who was like the
It is.
coolest? Like, I know this is like an impossible question, but who comes up first when you think of like who is my favorite like celebrity or director who came into the shop and you worked with directors?
It's pretty easy for me just because I grew up in high school. Yeah, high school. I was such a big Firefly fan that I was like, one day if I work with Nathan Fillion, that'd be pretty cool. And then when I got the info, I had started working on the Orgo Sentries, which is what Nathan Fillion played in Guardians. I started working on those not knowing that he was one of them at the time. And then suddenly the lead of the project was like, so Nathan's going to come in for a fitting. And I was like, Nathan? And that's when I knew it was Nathan Fillion. And we have a mutual friend. And so I was like, well, I'm not like I've got something to just talk to him about. I'm not just going to like totally, and I can keep my cool around like celebrities and stuff. But I was like, man, it'd be really cool if you just have a great experience with him. And he came in for the fitting and he's super nice and cordial. We were sharing cat pictures eventually on set. Like, people that are very, very cordial to the people that are torturing them, essentially, because we're putting this really uncomfortable, sweaty suit on him, and he's still nice to us. I'm like, thank God. So setting time out in Atlanta on set with him was a lot of fun, especially, and it's just a lot of like, I'm sorry that we're doing this to you because I know it's not comfortable to wear these things. But he was very cool and always took the time. Always said, good morning to us, say goodbye to us, thanks for taking care of us and stuff, and like. Sometimes when we're handlers, basically when we're someone that dresses somebody and takes care of them, make sure they've got everything you need. When they appreciate it and they tell you, then you kind of feel a little bit of like, oh, we did our job, like we took care of somebody. And a lot of it is like a lot of times, like I was saying, people at Legacy know how hot it gets or how uncomfortable it gets, and so like we have a pretty good understanding of what they're going through. So we can go up. Yeah. It could be as simple as being like, hey Nathan, would you like a little bit of fan action on you because it's probably getting really hot in there. And so it was just it's such a vague answer being like he's just really nice, but it was one of the cooler experiences in my life, and it was cool to kind of talk about this mutual friend that we have that is just also a very nice guy. So it was nice to bond over people we know and to get through such a cool project.
I want to know about the testing process. Like at your is there an area that's just covered in foam that you get to like throw wings on and crash into stuff, and you're like, guess I gotta test it today, and you're just ramming into walls?
It's pretty much whatever space is available at the time with all the different departments. It's whatever department has the least amount going on where we'll go test those things. Like the wings were so big that we're like, we got to go outside for this. So we have a back area that we had to do that in and stuff. And we have a makeup room where we do a lot of the like molding of actors, and we will test silicone prosthetics stuff. And sometimes we'll do costumes in there too, just because it's an air controlled room. A lot of the tools are there, so it's private, so it's the nice environment for them to basically be in the most vulnerable state where sometimes my wife is slapping silicone on their face and like, don't worry, we'll get you out of there as soon as you can. So those are kind of how we test things out, is just the space that's available, or if it's something like makeups, we can test out in the makeup room.
It's so interesting to me to see a workshop on a scale like that. You know what I mean? Like you don't see like someone's garage isn't decked out the way that it is, and like with like its own paint cube cage thing. Like we appreciate you giving us the time to get to know you a little bit, but I think it's time for the lightning round. Let's do a couple quick fire questions. Just like
I'm ready.
They're nothing insane. Just first thing that comes to mind. Ash, do you want to lead it or shall I?
Yeah, I can do it really quick.
Let's do it. All right. Lightning
ready?
round.
All right. Current song on repeat.
Oof. Gosh. There's a song by Louis Demand called "Attitude" that I've been playing a lot.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Something that you're good at that nobody knows.
I almost said drawing, but sailing. There we go, sailing.
Oh, okay.
Sailing.
Wow.
Oh.
I get it.
He's a
Engineering makes
boatsman.
sense. Okay.
They're called
Something
Pulleys
you're,
and levers and-
something you're currently obsessed with.
The new marathon game coming out because I'm a big Bungie fan, so I'm trying to get all the
Oh,
information I can
yeah.
about that. That's my upbringing was Bungie, so hence the Halo
Yes.
craze.
That's the Halo, right? Right.
Favorite comfort food.
Ramen. Definitely ramen, which I've shared with Locke
All
a
right.
number of times.
Tell us your order.
At the spot down by my house, I either get the tonkatsu black if I want the more garlicky taste, or the tonkatsu spicy if I'm feeling a little more adventurous that way. And I always get it with pork and sometimes with an extra egg and thick noodles.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
that's a very specific
got an
order.
order.
You know what you like.
I've got it down.
You know you're on. Yeah.
He knows
Okay.
what he wants.
What do you order during happy hour?
Just Modelo. I'm more of a beer guy. I suffer from the Asian glow, so some of the harder alcohols will expedite the process, and I'll just turn red and just be useless the rest of the night. So beer is usually an easier way for me to not just completely be incapacitated.
I don't drink
That's good.
ever, and we this past weekend or something, we went to go get drinks, and my husband turns to me and he's like, "You're red," and I'm like, "It's Asian glow."
Well, my brother gets it way worse than I do, so I should count myself lucky. But every now and again, my Swedish side will be like, "We'll take it from here," and then I can drink.
Aw.
Sometimes I don't get it, but most of the time, my wife will be like, "You're turning really red."
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Your ideal day off, especially you're in the studio, you're using your hands, you're tired. What are you doing on your day off?
Lately, my wife and I like to go out to either the forest, the desert, or the beach. We take our Bronco, we either do a little off-road trail or find a nice tree to park a hammock up. And so a lot of times she'll prepare a little picnic lunch. Cheese words are her
So
thing.
cute.
Cheese
That
pudding.
has become all of
Aw.
our ideal days off now. That's so awesome.
Wait,
Yeah,
can I be your wife's best friend? Your wife sounds cool, man.
Like I said, she's much cooler than I am. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, an unpopular opinion.
Oh.
I don't like the show Friends very much.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Oh, hot take, but a good hot take. I feel like you would have some people on your side for that one.
Usually the division is either you're a Friends guy or a Seinfeld guy, and I happen to be a Seinfeld guy. But I get the impression that the Friends people outnumber them. But I'm not sure if that's just my optics.
Optics are a big thing, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Going to 7-Eleven, what can I get you?
Recently, my wife showed me a video of a guy showing you the right way to eat Airheads, which is apparently you're supposed to take those little sugary bars. Apparently, you're supposed to shake them until they turn into basically a balloon, and then you eat them. Had no idea.
What?
I kid you not, weeks ago. And so we tried it on
What?
the way. Yeah, try it. It worked. It turned into a little balloon. I will, and maybe another unpopular opinion after you try it, but I actually prefer the regular way of just eating it as a stick.
So
But,
you're telling me you don't bite into it like a little candy power
No.
bar? It's
You
shake
it was
it?
one. It's one guy on Instagram, so maybe there's something to that. But it made sense to me because the logo was like a balloon, and then we
was a
we took
balloon.
it out, and it looks kind of like a balloon. But
whoever was in
sugary
charge of
treats-
marketing that is fired.
There's
from
no
the 90s.
instructions. There's not a single commercial that says, "By the way, you've been doing it wrong. Please turn
Shake
it into
it,
a balloon
Airhead."
and then eat it." Oh, and
This
he
is
If
allegedly-
you
where-
don't shake it, you're the airhead. Oh my god, we're so dumb.
I
Oh,
don't-
genius.
I will quantify it by saying too is that he alleges that it changes the flavor by doing this, and I don't know if it's placebo. The first time I did it, I was like, I think it tastes a little different, and then I did a few more bites. I'm like, no, he's full of it. That's just the same.
I'm so
Tastes like
pissed
latex.
off. What
Yeah.
the hell?
Decades of my life be eating Airheads the wrong way, and I like sugary candy. So that Airheads is kind of been my go-to little sugary snack from 7-Eleven. And
This
green
is where
tea,
your math
Arizona.
shines. Oh, good combination. Good combination.
I'm trying to pretend
Alright.
I'm not just fill packing myself with sugar. I don't want to do soda and Airheads. It just seems overkill.
Sounds like my kind of night, though. Sugar.
Off camera, I would certainly tell you I was going to go say.
Off camera, he's like, "Oh, I just eat sugar by the spoonful."
If I
Don't
turn
say
the camera around a little bit,
it's a
Airhead
pile.
wrappers and Coca-Cola cans.
Your
That's
wife is just
awesome.
like in the background with an airhead wrapper.
I almost got it ready, babe. Just 2 more seconds.
If I combine all of them, we'll have enough to reach the moon.
Have you seen the movie Up?
Oh. Those weren't balloons; they were all airheads. That man
funny.
has so much diabetes.
Oh man.
Love it.
Oh, well, we don't want to take too much of your time, and I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation and you didn't feel like you were talking too much. We were just fascinated by everything that you were saying.
I do like explaining sometimes because, like a lot of the times, if I ever tell people what I do, they go, "That's cool. I don't know what the hell you're talking about." Because it is, like I said, it operates in such like kind of a niche area that like not a lot of people know exactly what it entails. So it is kind of nice to explain because a lot of times, not in a desperate attempt to seem impressive, but like just as an educational thing to be like, "Oh, isn't it cool that this exists? Isn't practical effects still really cool and stuff?" And it's all the suits you see sometimes. It's all really cool and fulfilling to me. So like when I tell somebody about it and then they like it too, just kind of nice because that's kind of in a rudimentary way. That's kind of how I got into it when I saw it, and I was like, "That's really cool. I'd like to do that." It'd be the same if someone told me the Iron Man suit was real. I'd be like, "No," and then here I am working at that place. Didn't build any of those Iron Man suits, but just cool to be around them.
It's still cool to be like in the presence of them. But this podcast we talk about what it means to be like a minority out in the entertainment industry. And I remember we had like a very brief text conversation about connecting with your culture. But in your adult life, do you feel more aware of your Asian American background, or does that not really come up in your line of work? Because like for Ash and I, comes up all the time, right? But we're being
Every
judged
day.
for
Right.
our faces, our looks, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like for you behind the scenes, does it feel like there's that same kind of energy?
It certainly isn't as impactful for us, maybe because we're so far down the line of production, meaning like, for instance, people are generally already cast by the time they get to us, for instance. So we don't get to see those conversations where some of those decisions are being made. So a lot of that never factors into our stuff. It is certainly, I don't know, say just like above my pay grade, but just above our department. Like we just don't deal with those kind of conversations, thankfully, because they're tough ones, and I know how tough it can be. And I was joking with you earlier or the other day that like just it's been a little bit lost on me being kind of ambiguous enough looking where some like not many people know exactly my ethnic background just by looking at me. A lot of people there's 3 traditional guesses that people usually will spit out. And so I haven't felt that effect quite as much because maybe nobody can assuredly be like, I can't really throw an Asian joke at him because I don't even know if he's Asian. He might be Hispanic or something. So maybe being ethnically ambiguous has eluded me, or maybe I'll just sheltered from it. But it was it was kind of a non-factor in my life, and I didn't grow up predominantly with my Asian family who are very, very traditionally Chinese. And so it just kind of it went not necessarily went over my head, but like I didn't feel the effects that they had felt as very, very a full Chinese family. So again, like I don't know if you would call it like I feel lucky, but like I've certainly I would probably say that I'm lucky not to have experienced a lot of racism. And I remember someone actually asked me years ago. There was an article that came out about Jeremy Lin of the Golden State Warriors, and there was a headline that could easily be conceived as a racial comment, and someone asked me like, "Does that bug you?" And I was like, "I don't think so. No, like no one had ever asked me like, does an Asian joke bother you?" So it was weird to even, and it's obviously someone that knew me and knew that I was Asian, but like it just has been so has not really come up in my life a lot, and I, like I said, maybe it's living a little bit in an oblivious world, but like not having been subjected to it, maybe I do feel lucky not having to feel the wrath of racial events or racism. it's tough. I see it, and I'm just glad that it doesn't happen to me as often as others.
Good. Hey, we're here to celebrate anyone who could connect with their identity without having a crisis. So hell yeah.
Oh man.
And like I was saying, like I was very aware of a lot of like the Chinese stereotypes that like my family very clearly was my Asian my Chinese grandma was always like, "You're gonna be a doctor, right?" I'm like, "What? My mom's a Swedish artist. Like, how am I gonna be a doctor?" So like just a lot of like the really 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 bad stereotypes. I don't go through them all, but like I was at least acutely aware of them viewing my family, but thankfully none of it had deflected to me. But
Yeah.
it made me much more aware of like what they go through just seeing it, and especially my neighbor who was also Asian, and so getting to see that go through. I was like, wow, you go through a lot, and she would kind of be like, yeah, but you don't go through it. I'm like, well, I'm like vaguely tan and don't necessarily look like a certain race, so it's not as easy for people to pinpoint and maybe pick at or bully at.
Yeah, and it's just the truth. I mean, everyone's background is complicated, but thank you for sharing that either way, because it is interesting, just to see how it affects if it affects different people in that way.
Yeah, I
Um,
almost it's so weirdly like every now and again like I feel guilty by saying like I didn't really none of it really had crossed my path in my life, but it's just I don't know if
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
being ambiguous enough, but like I do count myself lucky not to have experienced that, because I'm sure it can shape people or negatively impact people or weigh on their minds all
Yeah.
the time. It's terrible and it's unnecessary. So I do feel lucky that it wasn't subjected to it.
100%. Yeah. A lot of people don't even know that I'm Filipino, and they don't know my cultural background, and I get ethnically ambiguous. That's all I get. They're like, I don't know what you are. You're something. That's all you are to me. I don't know. I don't care. It's like they don't even care in a way too. But there's that privilege, right, of not being able to,
Mhm.
like, you don't truly know. I don't know. Like, you connect with it, but you also don't truly know what the hardships are. But you have the privilege of both being in the community, but not truly like getting every single aspect that isn't fun. But you can, I don't know, it's a lot of the push and pull. And I know for me, in my experience, that's kind of forced me to double down within my job as a PR person, within my job
Right.
as a filmmaker. So I enjoy hearing what you said about that. That was very insightful.
Yeah,
Just a bunch of mixed kids.
It is
hanging
and it's
out,
kind of
talking about ourselves.
That is my very like unscripted answers. It's just like I don't know what to tell you. Like not a lot has happened, which can be good or bad considering who you ask. And
Yeah.
It is a blessing, though, in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that said, we're rounding out here, and we always give our guest a moment to share whatever message that they want. So you could tell us a message that you have for audiences, maybe budding creatives. You could tell us what you've got going on in your life or projects you're excited for. Maybe you can't talk about that. It's very NDA unfriendly, I know. But
or you can talk about your favorite sports teams.
Yeah, we want to. We can talk about the Penguins.
Let me get my wife for you. Jamie, they want to talk about the Penguins. That's kidding. That's kidding.
Don't let anyone in San Jose hear me say that, because I will get.
I'll play that for all of them.
Don't do it.
All I know is that the Golden Knights won something, and there's a parade happening down the street. That's all I know. No. I don't watch sports. I'm sorry, y'all.
That's
something so that there is solace is that some of ex-Penguins players are on that team. So well, at least some of my guys got to a Stanley Cup. So I can go down the list of what I remember, but I do. One of the things I always tell, because every time I hold a panel on how to build costume stuff, the one thing I always try to encourage budding creatives is to just go out and try something. I didn't realize like that 99% of people are like, yeah, I really want to try something, but I have no idea where to start. And that is like, I get it. Starting is the hardest part, especially if you have no tools or no area or no wherewithal. Like, and there are so many YouTube tutorials out there now, and so many resources, and like so many people come up to us after panels and be like, thanks, that kind of gave me like the knowledge I needed to start something. Because a lot of people, like I said, just they don't know where to start, so they don't. Whatever that means to them, whether it is cosplay or they want to get into animatronics or they want to get into makeup and stuff. It sounds really oversimplified, but just trying something, which is kind of what I did. Like, I want to build a Halo suit. I don't know how, so I eventually just tried it. My first go around was pretty rough. It maybe looks okay on the outside, but it's not comfortable. It doesn't really hold together very well, and it's heavy. So that's what I would say for creatives. You're right. I can't talk too much about work. Guardians 3 just came out, and that was probably the most proud I've been of work that we've done, because like my wife and I had our hands on just so many different characters. It's so cool to like do all this stuff. And then there's that dead zone where we finish a project, and then whether we're there filming or not, there's months and months of post-production that we're not involved in. So we go, man, that was a cool experience. All right, I'll see that in a year. And so it was kind of like this one project where we're really looking forward to seeing, because so much of it was from us, and not that makes the project good or bad, but it was just like in our own legacy way, it was kind of a nice celebration of all the work, because it was close to 2 years, and just an army of people just working day in and day out on these projects, that it was really cool to finally be like, oh, we finally get to see everything we made. And it was just it blew me away seeing all that stuff, and all the work looked really good. And I'm so proud of everyone that I work with, and other studios too that worked on that movie too. It's just great to see all of it come together into what I would say is a well-received movie. And I maybe cried quite a few times during that movie, and then I saw it a second time and I cried more, and I was like, I didn't even know what was coming. And then the last one, the sports team, the San Francisco Giants, are doing pretty well. I live in Dodger Town, so it's kind of hard to be a Giants fan when everyone here has a lot of hatred for the Giants. So they're doing well. That's nice. I don't know how long it'll last. Hopefully all the way into the playoffs and beyond. But I won't hold my breath. But baseball is my thing, so that's what I'm looking forward to, sports wise. So yeah, I think I covered the question.
I think that was a great.
That's perfect.
Go build something. Go watch Guardians 3. Go Giants.
Go Giants.
That's great. Wait, can I ask a quick follow-up question? Because I'm so curious. When you watch projects that you've been working on, literally your hands are inside of these bodies for days and weeks. Can you just watch it? Or are you like, oh, okay, that answers a question.
Actually, I will say that Guardians 3 was the first time that I've truly, and I think there's something to be said about the theater experience, because a lot of for instance, Mandalorian is a streaming show, so my wife and I watch it in the comfort of our own home, and when it's just us too, a lot of times we're like, oh my god, like, oh, what did we missed something, or we didn't do a very good job puppeteering that, or that we think the paint job looks terrible even though it's great, or something like that. Guardians, maybe it was because it was the theater experience, but it was I think the first time in years that I've truly disconnected and just watched it, instead of being like, okay, I did that and that looks good. Okay, we worked on that and that looks good. I remember I was there on that day and that looked really good. It was nice. It was really, like I said, like one of the first times in a while that we've watched something objectively as a movie, instead of instead of us nitpicking our own art, because that's typically what we do, especially if we're involved in the performances. We're just like, oh, it's terrible. But I don't know, maybe that's maybe if we were guys that were like, all our stuff is awesome, all our performances were great, another job well done. So I'm glad we're not like that.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you got to sit back. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. We always want to just do a good job. That's what everyone that I work with says. I just want to do a good job. I want it to look good. I want it to sell. I wanted to be believable. So I think we did a really good job on Guardians with that.
Freaking congrats. Yeah.
Thank you.
Seriously, it's been so cool to watch your journey. And I know I say this all the time to you, but we'll meet at the top. And I mean that. I'm going to go in for a movie that I'm in, and you're going to be like in charge of making me look cooler.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome.
And then Law's like, can we just make the neck a little less tight? These gauntlets are so tight. My fingers don't go all the way. And I'll be like, oh,
my stilts aren't high enough. I need to look at least 3 feet taller than this.
Actually, on the flip side, Law, if I am involved, I just want you to give me the...
Is there a fire?
There's a fire alarm going off in my house.
All I ask of you, be honest, because if you tell me it's too tight now, we can fix it. But if you tell me on the day when we're filming and you're like, the neck is too tight, I'm like, you had your chance.
I wish this was more comfortable, Cary. Why would you make it like this?
I just wanted to torture you. I don't know.
Amazing. But we're going to let you go. But thank you so much for coming on and making time and dealing with all the emailing. That's mostly Ash. Ash is a killer with emails.
I had a blast.
I had nothing to do with the communication other than like asking you if you had a picture to use. So that was like I was like, hey, so oh yeah. Also, are you Asian? No, I didn't ask. Are you Asian? I was like, how do you connect with being Asian? But
it was a blast, guys. Like I said, I do. It's fun to talk about it sometimes. Mostly in the capacity of most people don't know what I do, so it can be kind of fun to have people be aware of those kind of behind the scenes things. And
now you got a whole podcast of answers.
If you ever need someone to stick in slime or like some goo, I'm down. Put me in some goo, man. I'm in it. Throw me against the wall and like a shield. I don't know. I'm here. If you need a body, put some wings.
So Law's gonna hate me because I make a suit too tight, and you're gonna be like, "That was so gooey, and it didn't come out of my hair for weeks." And neither of you are gonna talk to me ever again. I'm so sad.
Why do you
We're
do
gonna
this to
delete the
people?
podcast off of the Spotify. We're
Well, I
upset.
mean, that's like I said, it's the hardest thing to like put like one of your childhood actor heroes in a suit that is uncomfortable. But you're like, I'm sorry, I like you as a person, and so I'm sorry I have to do this.
I think you're so cool. You just gotta breathe.
He's
okay?
like, do you? Because this is pretty uncomfortable.
That's
You want some
so
air?
funny.
No, Nathan was a
That's so
trooper.
cool.
I have nothing but a trooper on that, and it was amazing to work with him, and that was definitely a career
Aw.
highlight.
Well, this was a highlight for us to work with you
Aw.
today. Thank
I
you
appreciate
so
it, guys.
much.
Your buddy. We
My
spoke
buddy.
to your buddy.
Yes, and I thought it was really fun. It was so it's honestly so cool to like hear him talk about like even just the scale of shit that he's doing. It's like I know it, I see it, and I still can't fathom it. I'm really really proud of him, honestly.
The whole time I was trying to, I'm like, I don't understand any of this. And then Mythbusters came in my head, and I was like, this makes sense. Math and creating things. He's a Mythbuster. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, okay. I see it. I see it all now.
It's so funny that you brought that up because Cary, I became friends with Grant Imahara from Mythbusters a little bit before he passed away, so I didn't know him for too long. But Cary has an energy that reminds me of Grant, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But they both are just like really intelligent people, creative people, and fantastic at what they do, and incredibly kind and warm. I think, I mean, in between recording this and the main episode, we just were chatting with Cary behind the scenes. Like he's just someone who's very generous with his time and his knowledge, and yeah, I don't know. I feel really blessed that we had him on the podcast, and especially coming from we're just a couple Bay Area nerds that saw each other at comic book conventions and hung out together whenever we could, and to both be here in LA and respectively climbing our ladders. It's very cool, and I always tell him I'll meet you at the top. Like I'm very very serious about that, and I tell that to people that I believe it for, you know what I mean? And I really do think that's where our paths are not only going to continue crossing, but they're headed to the same almost destination. You know what I mean? At least that's
so
the
awesome.
optimist in me thinking. What
But
were some of
also,
your takeaways?
there's so many, like, your journeys are so different. There's
Mhm.
no comparing, or even like there's no sort of like there's sure as a parallel, but there's no it's just so cool.
Yeah,
Both
no,
two
for
kids
real.
from San Jose just following their dreams in whatever kind of way that is to you, and the journey that's brought you here, and the trials and tribulations that have come in the way. I mean, like, and now you're here crossing paths again. I can't wait to see where you cross paths again in the future. And that's the beauty of the industry, right? Like, there's so many yucky parts of the industry and things we
Yeah.
hate, things we complain about, but the beauty is that when you find your tribe, your group of people, the people that like you grow and you excel and you communicate with, that is where like beauty happens and magic happens, right? And you may not see each other for 2 years at a time, but when you come back to those 2 years, man, you're gonna have some stories to tell.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think for me, the takeaway was just to start it. I mean, there's that throwing spaghetti on the wall kind of thing, and I'm one of those people that a lot of people say, like, think about things first, dude. Like, don't just throw spaghetti on the wall and make things work. But this conversation reminded me of the importance of throwing spaghetti on the wall and just doing it, the act of doing, right? And just
Mhm.
getting it out there. What about you, Law?
Well, it's interesting that you said that because it is true, right? Like people talk a lot of talk, but it's very different when you make the decision to actually go and try. And the fact that his whole job, like it both it lives because he tries and fails, and like, you know what I mean, like it continues to grow because he's constantly learning from those failures. I think that's a really interesting, it's obviously a very not so subtle metaphor for life where you just continue to keep going, but it is interesting to hear just from because his mindset's different than maybe mine would be in that situation. You know what I mean? It's not disheartening. It's like, okay, I learned something from that. And I think that's like a really cool silver lining in like those failures. Even like for an actor, you know, maybe you don't do so good on audition, maybe you don't learn how to talk to people properly. All those failures lead to something greater if you can utilize it that way. Whereas people who talk and say I can't do it and make excuses for why they can't do it, maybe their life circumstances are right, but Cary said himself, is like, it's not too late, just try, you know. And so if anyone walks away from this podcast with anything, I think Cary said is simply just try, because it could lead to some amazing things. Like, here's this kid who was cosplaying for fun, and now he pitched himself to one of the biggest like FX studios in Hollywood. Like, I'm incredibly proud of that journey for him. And
he met his wife there.
And he fell in love. Like, is it like, what more can you ask for? You guys need to go on his Instagram and just like look at the cool outdoor excursions. Like, we could have talked to him for another hour, but I mean, for the sake of the podcast being a reasonable listen, we had to cut it off. But he lives a very interesting life, and I'm really glad that we had him on.
I'm glad to listen into your conversation between two buddies.
Yeah.
And now I'm one of your buddies too.
Yeah.
Yay.
I can't believe we talk so much in between. Maybe one day we'll have like a Patreon episode where it's like, listen to the in-between bits, but that's another
tremendous time. Tea. I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there.
We'll make more work. All right. But that about does it, I think, for today's episode. It's been a long day, but a fulfilling day. We got a lot of trade secrets. But I think you and I both need a rest, because you know what, Ash? You deserve it, because you are tremendous.
I'm going to take that in for a second. I needed to hear that today. It's been a long one. It's been a long.
Yeah. Let's all just
been a hard day's night. You know what, though, La? You're tremendous, too.
Aw, man. And I think everyone listening right now, you are tremendous. Thank you for joining us. Pew, pew, pew. We'll see you on the next one.
The Tremendous Talk podcast is produced by Lawrence Sharma, Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, Gabriela David, Joseph Feralde, and Jeremiah Abraham in collaboration with Tremendous. The Tremendous Talk podcast jingle is by Jared Sanchez and Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, produced at Amsterdam Records.